Good morning, good afternoon, it's right on the line. So everybody, welcome to Brown Bag Lunch. Good to see everybody here today on this beautiful day, and it is beautiful outside. We have some quick announcements. We have cards going around, we have birthday card. We have some birthday cards, we have a sympathy card for Pat Names. And a birthday card for Judy Bowling, and a birthday card for Lana Flagel, and we're going to say happy birthday to her. And while Alice is getting ready, I just want to thank Lana, and I know you want to thank Lana, for the beautiful decorations that she did for St. Patrick's Day and for Easter. She had to set them up twice because I messed up. So she set them up, took them down, put them up again, and she was wonderful. And so I just want to especially thank Lana. Let's say happy birthday to her.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lana. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Alice. Happy birthday, Lana. We have just a couple announcements. I know that if Shirley Brandon were here, she would want to remind everybody about the spring fling at the Methodist Church. It's Wednesday, April 15th. Free will offering, 9 to 11 coffee, 11 to 2 lunch, and it's always wonderful. So please remember that. Our garage sale is going to be the first week of June. So start bringing in all of your treasures. And we want everybody to remember that there's going to be a 250th, I don't know what we're calling it yet, maybe, birthday soiree at Squires Manor on June 6th. But before that, on May 23rd, there's going to be a memorial celebration as we celebrate our heroes in Jackson County at the Andrew Fairgrounds. Andrew Cemetery. Sorry, Andrew Cemetery.
What happens to spring fling again?
The spring fling is 9 to 11, they have coffee and rolls, and 11 to 12, 11 to 2, they have lunch.
Thank you.
You bet. All right. So I want to thank Terry for being here today, and he's pitch hitting for Mary on the camera to get everything recorded. But it was just by chance that we're talking a little bit civil war-ish here. And so, you know, our 3rd annual muster on the Maquoketa is coming up this fall, and we always have a raffle to earn money for the muster. Terry has a beautiful, beautiful rifle he's going to talk about.
This is a rifle from Henry Repeating Arms. It's in the style of what many of you would think of as a Winchester. Okay, it's got all kinds of nice stuff here. In the bronze here, the brass, it's got different parts of things that have happened in the country throughout the history of it. Go every from 1867, 1846, when states came into. This is a numbered weapon. Okay, this is number 261. So from a collector's standpoint, this is a very valuable. Notice I'm not even touching it without gloves. So, but like on the other side over here, it has nice engraving. It says 250th. God bless America. It's got pictures of wagon trains and all kinds of stuff. 1776, 2026, United States. So it's just a really great weapon. We're raffling it off for $20 a ticket, or 3 for $50. We're only having 250 tickets because we're not dealing with a $400 weapon anymore. We're dealing with a $2,000 weapon. So people that would be interested in this and want to buy tickets are going to be glad that we're only selling so many tickets, so they know what the odds are. Okay? Then they don't mind spending 20 bucks a ticket. But that's what we're doing with it, and just wanted to, we're getting our muster on Maquoketa started off.
We are.
While she's going, I'll just walk it around so anybody can take a quick look at it, and that way we move forward. Huh?
Good idea.
All right.
Good idea.
The ladies might want to buy tickets.
That's right, they might. So this is not only just a weapon, this is a collector's item, as you can tell, and worth a great deal of money. And always we have, for the people who maybe don't want to buy a ticket because they don't want a weapon, I believe that $1,500 here is the cash equivalent. So if you don't want the weapon, you buy a ticket, you win, you have to take $1,500. Okay, so Terry's going to show that to everybody, and it was just a coincidence that the rifle came while we are talking a little bit about the muster and the Civil War today. We're going to talk about Joseph Jackson Woods, Jackson County resident who just became one of the great heroes that we talk about. We're talking about him, and while we're looking at this, I hope that you'll be thinking a little bit about the photographs. You'll notice that there are photographs of him up here, and that has come into dispute because at the first muster and the second muster, some of the experts on Civil War who came to us and said, we think that the museum has this picture misidentified. We do not think that this is an image of Colonel Joseph Jackson Woods. So be thinking of that as we go along. We're trying to prove our point that why we think it is. And people like Michael Houston, who is quite an expert on military, on Civil War images, and was here and did a great program for us last year, is one of those people that thinks that perhaps it's misidentified. So as we're going through this, kind of be thinking about that and how we're doing a lot of research to try to prove here why we think this. And so if you can add anything along the way, that would be wonderful. Okay, so Joseph Jackson Woods, and he was born in January 11th, 1823, on a farm in Brown County, Ohio. And he, like most people back then, moved westward with his family. His father was a very able farmer, but he was 50 years old when Joseph was born. And when Joseph was then 10 years old, so he would have been 60, his father, who had been very successful, suffered a financial, physical, and mental breakdown. And he left this large family in great disarray. So here we have Joseph, a young boy, 10 years old. He was just farmed out to various relatives for a long time. He received some formal schooling, but not very much. And then when he was 14 years old, he was apprenticed to a man by the name of Joseph Parrish. Joseph Parrish was quite a great guy. He became private secretary to President Grant, and one of his main jobs was to sign land patents. So some of the patents around here may well have been signed by him. So here we have young Joseph learning the saddler's trade. He learned to make saddles, and he worked really hard. He had to work for his board and his clothing, and he became very proficient at making saddles. But he worked from dawn until 9 o'clock at night, 5 days a week, and that left him very little time for learning. But fortunately, he had a cousin. His cousin's name was Dr. Allen Woods. And Dr. Woods married a lady from Vermont, a very cultured lady named Miss Whipple. And she became aware of Joseph, and she offered to become his private tutor. He was very, very fortunate. Now he was able to borrow books from the good doctor's library, and he used every minute of every day to its best advantage. He completed, while working with her, courses in arithmetic, English grammar, geography, and history. And at the end of his apprenticeship, a Presbyterian minister took note and offered him free classes in Latin and Greek so that he could round out his education. And he did this for 7 more months, still working mornings till evenings in the saddler shop to pay his board. After that was over, he again was fortunate to be given free tuition in the freshman class at the first Methodist college established in America at Augusta, Kentucky. But he was struggling to keep up financially. So Dr. Woods advised him to apply for an appointment at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. Though competition for this spot was very intense, he had excellent sponsors. And I can tell you how important good sponsors are if you're trying to get into a military academy. In 1843, he was accepted into West Point, and he took the place that had been vacated by U.S. Grant, and he graduated third in his class at West Point. During the last year, he was an assistant professor as well as a student. So he was underway. So his grandfather, James Woods, had served in the Revolutionary War. He came to America in 1773 and he served from Pennsylvania. So Joseph Jackson Woods too became a military man, and we can read about him in the Annals of Jackson County. And the Annals of Jackson County had an interesting description for him. They said he was a slender, stooping form, brown hair, light complexion, mild blue eyes. He was in appearance and in fact the most unassuming of military men. He spoke slowly and kindly, and he was accustomed to give commands with great coolness and deliberation. And this reminded many that knew him of U.S. Grant, because that was his way. So in 1848, he was a second lieutenant, and he fought in the Mexican-American War. But then he had to return to the United States because he contracted yellow fever. So he was sick for a while. After his recovery, he was sent with the regular army to Oregon. And he was there until 1853. But then he took a leave of absence from the military, and he came to Jackson County, where he bought a farm just a mile and a half northwest of Hurstville. So I wondered to myself, why did he choose Jackson County? But I found out that he had relatives here. And some of the relatives down the line, I bet many of you know. Farmers Creek Township, we all remember Zelda and Bert Dustle. They were related. In fact, Bert Dustle's middle name was Woods, and that was his mother Mabel's maiden name. So they had a relationship to the Woods family. So I'm assuming that that's why he would have come to Jackson County, of all places he could have gone. Well, soon after he was here and he began farming, he married a woman from Scott County. Her name was Kezia Height, and they began a family. She was 17 years younger than he was. She had been born in 1840 in Ohio. Their first child was named Oscar, and you'll hear his name again. I think that they had 7 children. The first 5 were born in Iowa, probably many in Jackson County, but possibly a couple in Independence. And then the last 2, Nellie and Laura Jenny, were born in Kansas. So we have in the museum, in the military display at the other building, we have this photo. It's up here. And we have this is Robert Nelson Woods, and we have his military uniform from the Civil War. He was a private in the 2nd Iowa Cavalry. I was told that Robert Woods and Joseph Jackson Woods were cousins, and his uniform was donated by Bert Woods Dustle. So keep that in mind. According to our records, and sometimes records get messed up, I admit, but according to our records, back before my time, because I never make mistakes, you know, according to our records, Bert Dustle and his family also donated this large painting that you see here of J.J. Woods. Now, it seems to me, and I'm asking for your opinion, I guess, it seems to me if they were relatives and they donated a picture to the Historical Society down the line, they knew who their relative was and that was a picture of him, right? So this is one of our big claims to fame, that we think that we have the right name with the right picture, even though this is being disputed by the experts. 2 other things that we have that kind of go along with this. They're called CDVs, or, and I probably don't even pronounce this right, carte de vista, and they're album print photographs mounted on small paper cards. I brought one with that you can come up and look at. They were usually about 2 1/4 inches by 3 1/2 inches. This seems bigger to me. But you'll notice that all of the images that we have, not him, but all of the images that we have of J.J. Woods are the very same image. They're just in different forms, right? And they were donated by different people. And again, this is part of the case that we're trying to make. This photograph I have in my hand, Joseph J. Woods, was donated by Clayton Pedersen and Mary Nevins Pedersen, and a lot of you knew them. She was a newspaper lady, right? She wrote a lot of articles. Well, Woods owned the Maquoketa Excelsior newspaper in his later life. He was owner and editor. And so I believe as a newspaper person, this might have come from there. And that's why this was why it was donated. We have another just exactly like this. It was donated to the Historical Society at a completely different time by the city of Maquoketa. Why would the city of Maquoketa have had a picture of him? Because at one time he was mayor of Maquoketa. So it all just seems to line up that we have the right name with the right person. But you never know. Mistakes can be made. So we're searching for answers. Okay, so this is a picture of, again, of the portrait that's up here before you. It's always in the military case at the museum. It's a little tattered and a little worn, but we are so very grateful to have it. It is a photograph that back in those days was transferred to a material, a canvas or a woven material of some kind. So please come up and look at it. Please don't touch it. It's really, really fragile. And again, these are the two other photographs that I was talking about in our collection that were donated as this man, as J.J. Woods, by people who should have known, right? Okay, so on with his story.
Be sure she gets them, okay?
Okay, so after he farmed in Jackson County for 8 years, the Civil War broke out, and J.J. Woods again returned to service. He went to the governor, and it resulted in him being commissioned as the colonel of the 12th Iowa Infantry on October 23rd of 1861. The 12th Iowa Infantry contained a large number of Jackson County men, and it was organized at Camp Union in Dubuque. J.J. Woods took the 12th to fight the Confederacy. He took them on troop ships that may very well have been one of these. And from the organization of this unit until December of 1864, he was constantly with the regiment as its commander or the commander of the brigade or division with which the 12th was serving. He and his troops were visited in the field by Iowa Governor Samuel Kirkwood, and he served closely with General Grant. This left many to wonder after the war why an officer who served so courageously, had such important command positions, was never made a general. And that question comes up often as you're reading about him. On April 6th of 1862, the 12th was in the thick of the Battle of Shiloh. Units to the right and to the left were compromised, and they were surrounded, absolutely surrounded by Confederates. And as the enemy closed in, they were so closely pressed that the enemy's balls that missed his men hit the soldiers in their own ranks. And to hang on longer would have been to suffer complete annihilation. So the regiment was compelled to surrender. Colonel Woods, who distinguished himself on the battlefield, was twice wounded. So badly wounded, in fact, that the rebels did not even take him captive when they took his men. Instead, he was left on the battlefield to die until the next day. The next day when they went back, he was still alive, and so at that point he was taken prisoner. Okay. So Colonel J.B. Dorr, who was affiliated with the Dubuque Herald newspaper, it's interesting how many newspaper men became officers leading units in the Civil War. And he left his post to recruit soldiers for the 12th Iowa Volunteers in 1861. And he was with Colonel Woods at the Battle of Shiloh. And while they were in prison, he kept a journal that he entitled Journal of My Prison Life by Colonel J.B. Dorr. It was published in Dubuque in 1877, and we do have one of these little manuscripts in our archives. So in reading it, he first writes about serving as an aide and running messages between the various commands. And he talks often about how much he loved his horse, whose name was Don. And he described it as mouse-colored. And he told of one time exchanging it for Colonel Wood's horse because Colonel Wood's horse had become really unmanageable. He had ridden out to scout, and on seeing a strong column of Confederates advancing toward them, he had warned Colonel Shaw of the 14th Iowa and then Colonel Woods. And the battle happened, and it raged on for quite some time. And then on pages 6 to 8 of his little book, he said that complete chaos followed the surrender and the order to stack arms. Colonel Dorr then looked for Woods, and he finally found him in a tent, severely wounded. Dorr nor his men ever found out what happened next to Woods, but when we read the 1910 Alice history of Jackson County, it talks about him, and it tells the following. It said that Colonel Woods lay upon the field wounded, and he was then assaulted by some Texas Confederate troops with the evident design of taking his life. But just at that moment, he was recognized by General Hardee. And General Hardee was someone that he had been acquainted with at West Point. They had been friends at West Point, and now they were on different sides of the battle. General Hardee gave him a special guard, and he permitted Colonel Woods' orderly to remain with him while the rest were taken away. The Union gunboat began shelling the area and driving the rebels from the field, but the wounded were not removed, and they lay there all night, exposed to shelling and a driving rainstorm. When the Union forces advanced, Colonel Woods and his men were then cared for, and he was sent north to recover. He remained in Iowa on recruiting duty until 1863, when his men captured at Shiloh were exchanged, and then the Army sent him to Benton Barracks to reorganize his regiment. And I think that's typically 1,000 soldiers in a regiment. And on to, at the time of the Civil War. And on to Rolla, Missouri they went, and then in April of 1863, he embarked his regiment on board a steamer, and he joined the fighting at Vicksburg, where again he distinguished himself as a commander. There he was always in command of a brigade or a division. And, I looked this up, during the Civil War, a brigade was usually 4,000 men. A division could be 5,000 to 12,000 men, but occasionally could be as large as 20,000 men. So he had quite a job, quite a responsibility. He served valiantly in the Vicksburg campaign, the battle and siege of Jackson, and at Tupelo. There are many, many excellent records of his experiences during the war, and if you have any interest at all in the Civil War or in Jackson County history, they're very, very fascinating to read. November 27, 1864, he mustered out of service. His men and his many friends were sad to see him go, and again, many were still wondering why, with such successful commands, he had not been made a general. Colonel Woods returned to Maquoketa. There he was able to write his recollections of the Battle of Shiloh, documenting the brave action of his officers and his men. And there's also a lengthy article in the 1910 Alice History of Jackson County entitled The Life of Colonel Joseph J. Woods. So he moved back home, first to his farm, and then he left the farm and moved into Maquoketa. And along with men, and I'm sure you've heard this name, W.F. McCarran, he purchased the Maquoketa Excelsior newspaper, and he became its editor. Then in 1867, he sold his interest in the paper to McCarran, and he again returned to the farm. But McCarran was not successful. He failed to make his payments, and Woods was forced again to take over the paper, and he did that, and he published it until 1869, when we're told that he moved to Kansas. So, I was going the wrong way, sorry. So, this is W. Scott Belden, and as you can see, he had quite a history of his own. The Jackson Sentinel of May 13, 1869, reported that with that same issue of the Excelsior, that Colonel J.J. Woods retired from its control, and he succeeded it to W.S. Belden, who had his own notable career in the Civil War, as you can see. Scott Belden later became a sheriff, earlier had been a sheriff maybe, in Jackson County for a time, for a term at least, and now he was the owner of the Maquoketa Excelsior newspaper. Newspapers had a lot of influence back then, remember. So it's just interesting to me of the, excuse me, of the newspapers that we've had in Jackson County over the time, that 3 of the owners and editors of the Maquoketa Excelsior are men who had distinguished themselves as great leaders during the Civil War. We had Captain Drips. Captain Drips was the editor of the Maquoketa Excelsior newspaper when he resigned to call up Company A of the 9th Iowa Infantry and go off to war. There was Lieutenant McCarran, who we talked about, and now Colonel J.J. Woods. So it's just interesting that they all newspaper men. Okay, so this is what, just kind of in a nutshell, what we knew about this great man from Maquoketa. And then, because he moved away, J.J. Woods just kind of disappeared from our radar. We didn't know any more about him after that. But when we started having the muster, like I said, and our attention was turned to the Civil War, and Civil War experts were coming, they realized, or they believed, that we had misidentified his portraits in our exhibit. Okay, and we've kind of talked about that, but just keep that in mind because we need lots of help with this. Okay, so one reason that the experts think that we're wrong is because of the Vicksburg National Military Park. Okay, he fought at Vicksburg. And so you see here I have 2 pictures of the Union trenches that have been preserved and sort of reconstructed earthworks. And they're kind of winding ridges that trace the 1863 siege lines. And these approaches, we're told, were 6 foot deep, and you can see them there. And those are paths that were dug by Union soldiers so that they could move closer to the Confederate fortifications with some protection. And as you look, you can see that there's a monument here, right? Over here is a monument. This monument was in honor of Colonel Woods. This is another photo of the trenches. And again, there is the monument of Colonel Woods at Vicksburg. So this is a photograph of the monument itself. The monument is a bronze relief portrait of Colonel Joseph J. Woods, and it was donated by his son Oscar that we mentioned a little bit ago, his first son that was born here, Oscar E. Woods. It was sculpted, and this information came from Vicksburg, from the National Park at Vicksburg. It was sculpted by T.A.R. Kitson, and the monument was erected in 1910. Woods had died in 1889. It cost $300 for the bronze and $92.30 for the granite pedestal that it sets on. But this image of Colonel Woods seems very unlike the photos that we have. Even taking into account that one would have been at the beginning of his military service when he was a young man, and this one at the end of his military service, and indeed after his death. Okay, so this is one reason why they are saying that this has to be J.J. Woods, therefore that cannot be. We further learned that just a few days after Woods resigned as editor of the Excelsior, that he received an important appointment from General U.S. Grant. He was appointed to be on the Board of Examiners to visit West Point in June. Well, the paper reported that J.J. Woods declined this honor because he said he had already made plans for a trip to Kansas. 2 years later, General Grant appointed him to the Board of Visitors at West Point. This is a big deal, the Board of Visitors at West Point. At that same year, he was appointed by the Secretary of the Interior to appraise the Cherokee mutual lands in Indian Territory. So I thought, okay, we need some more research here, and somewhere along the line, with all of these things that he did, there must be photographs that we can compare with our photographs and their photographs and maybe solve this problem for once and all, for all. So my next step was to contact the Kansas State Historical Society to see what they knew. And that's where I found this delightful lady named Susan. She was unaware of Woods at that point, but she soon found out that in 1872, he became a member of the Kansas legislature. And he was a regent at the State University there. And that he had held many other important positions in Kansas. So as we talked, we decided that if we combined what we knew about his early life with what she knew about his later life, we could maybe see his complete profile. So we've been working on this. We're still working on this. We still don't have answers, but we're still working on this. So this is a photo, thanks to her. It's the gravesite, as you can see, of Colonel Joseph Jackson Woods. He died at his home in Montana, Kansas on September 27, 1889. He was 76 years old. He was buried here next to his wife in the Oakland Cemetery in Parsons, Kansas, which is in Labette County. And the wreath that you see in front was sponsored by our Kansas researcher, Susan Harrison, Washington. So they have a program in Kansas called Wreaths Across America Day, and they donate wreaths. So she for two years now, she's putting wreaths on his grave. So she's very happy to know about him. The other thing that Susan did was she contacted West Point. And as we said, Colonel Woods took the seat vacated by U.S. Grant, and he went on to graduate third in his class, right? She discovered that West Point had an interesting exhibit of class rings. And the early rings that you got from West Point were, the person had to pay for their own. They were purchased at private expense. They were individually designed, and they were handmade. And this is Colonel Jackson's ring. They typically functioned as signets or seals, which is why the gravings were reversed, so when they used it as a seal, it would read correctly. It includes a class motto and the personal initials. And the earliest ring we learned in the collection was from the class of 1837. Wood's ring was 10 years later, the class of 1847, and it's the fourth oldest ring in the collection. But the added benefit for us is that it includes biographies of the graduates who owned the rings. So we have this awesome biography of Colonel Woods as they saw it, not as we put together, but as they saw it. So I'm just going to say again, you've heard some of these things, but Joseph Jackson Woods was born January 11th, 1823 on a farm. He entered the academy July 1st, 1840. He was born in 1823. He entered the academy in 1843. He was promoted to second lieutenant, 1st Artillery. He served at Fort Columbus, New York, 1847, Veracruz, Mexico, 1848. He was promoted to 1st Lieutenant, 1st Auxiliary, then served on the frontier duty at Fort Vancouver, Washington, from 1849 to 50, and from 52 to 53. Astoria, Oregon, from 1850 to 1851, and another place in Oregon from 1851 to 1852. But then, like we said, he resigned from the Army October 31st, 1853, became a farmer in Jackson County, Iowa. Farmed from 1853 to 1861. In 1861, he was appointed colonel of the Iowa 12th Infantry Volunteer Regiment, engaging in action at Fort Donaldson and Hornets Nest at Shiloh during the Civil War, and he mustered out of volunteer service on November 22nd, 1864, returned to farming. Woods was also editor of the Maquoketa Excelsior, a weekly newspaper in Maquoketa, Iowa, from 1865 to 69. He served as a member of the Board of Visitors to the U.S. Military Academy, 1871, was a member of the legislature of the state of Kansas, and as a notary public for the Labette County, Kansas, 1871 to 89, and he died September 27, 1889, in Montana, Kansas, age 67. So that's what they thought was important about his life, that they put with his ring. But then we found out something that was a little sad. From 1857 forward, 10 years later, right, forward, cadet photographs appeared with each ring. Now that would have solved our problem. If it had just been 10 years earlier, we would not have this mystery on our hands. Okay, so like I said, we feel that the photos that we have are of Woods. We feel that the one you see up here is when he graduated from West Point. And those experts that disagree with our theory say that this can't be, because at that time, photographs on paper were not yet in use. But our great researcher from Kansas, Susan, she found another clue that may explain some of that. And she's learned that in the area surrounding West Point, there were 3 foreign photographers who came to that area. And they came from different places, but they were working together, and they were working to perfect the technique of putting photographs on paper or a heavy cardboard. And they, as they were doing this, they selected for subjects presidents and military officers. They were right by West Point at that time. Could it be? We don't know. But could it be that our image is one of the very earliest that they did like that, before this type of photography became widely known? It's possible. Okay, so Susan, whoops, there's another picture of his ring. It's pretty beautiful, right? And he must have designed that. And you see there that the ring, we did learn that the ring was donated by his daughter. I can't remember the year. And those are some other rings that, or other things that they used through the years at West Point, through the early years, in lieu of rings. There were some women, so there were bracelets, and just some of the other things, but rings were always the most common. Okay, so Susan has been hard at work with the Kansas State Legislature, with Kansas State Archives, trying to find photos of our Colonel Woods. Certainly there should be something when he was serving in their state house. And she succeeded in getting copies of panels, you know how you go in big government buildings and they have huge panels with lots of little photographs. And the photographs were high, and it was very difficult to get good images of the pictures that were on there, even though he was on there. So they have not been yet, they have not been useful to us, but she's still working on that with them. Susan has also been in touch with the Smithsonian, and she's being told that her requests have been received and will be answered soon. So that's just some of the many things that she's looking at. Now, she did tell me that she has located a descendant of Colonel J.J. Woods. She's tried to get in contact with this person, but again, over the Easter holidays, et cetera, she hasn't been able to talk to her. So she's going to do that, hoping that somehow there might be family photos that have been handed down that might help. But we're just in the process of trying to find a picture, a photograph of this man that will prove our theory that these are the same picture as the one that was on his. Whoops, I'm going the wrong way again. So this is the photograph from the monument. You know, the monument is etched in stone, right? It's hard to distinguish. So that came from the picture on the monument. We can only imagine that that picture was furnished by his son, who paid for the monument on the battlefield at Vicksburg. So is that how he looked then? or
I
how
think
it,
they look the same. I think they
do you
look
see a
alike.
resemblance?
Yeah.
Across the forehead,
A
you know,
little bit
the,
more weight.
Okay.
yeah.
So-
So, he's older.
He's older.
I think they're the same
So-
person.
I just think with the evidence that we have, the things we've been given from the family, et cetera, that, you know, I think that we're right. But they're not giving up. They think that we're wrong, and so somehow we're gonna have to prove our point. They're not just, you know, taking our word for what we think. But anything that you ladies find in the genealogy library, because Zelda Dustall was such a great genealogist, anything that you can find anywhere as you're reading, whatever, that would help us with this.
Have you contacted Marion Evans Peterson to see?
You know, I don't know where she is. They
Oh,
moved
she's in
away.
New York.
New
Yeah,
York.
and I can probably figure out. Yeah.
Would you?
Yeah.
Would
I
you
could-
see?
She has a Facebook page.
yeah.
Okay, and I don't do Facebook. So would you follow up
Yeah.
on that and see if she knows where her picture came from? And you can maybe come up and take a picture of it and what's on the back of it.
Well,
There's very
you have it on the
faint-
Facebook page, so, or the,
It's on there?
well, from the Brown Bag Lunch,
Oh, okay,
so, yeah.
okay. But I didn't do what's on the back. There's an inscription on the back that's probably important. So maybe she needs to remember since she gave that to us. But that would be wonderful. So are there any other ideas out there of things that we can do to prove our point, to win our point?
Yeah, because it looks like him, and maybe the part is up, but maybe it's reversed, because the part's kind of on the other side.
side.
But the eyes and the forehead, yeah, to me, I don't see how they could say that it's definitely not him.
And I was, so the first person that came to us and said that we had a problem is the man that's from the Sons of the Civil War Pioneers, or I get Sons of Liberty of the Civil War, something like that, from Dubuque. He comes to our muster every year. And so he was the first to bring it to our attention. He emailed me, I've answered him, we've exchanged things, and then he just, I haven't heard from him since. Again, I'm trying to hear from him. Michael Houston was really helpful. I told him how much we enjoyed him being here, and we valued his opinion. He promised to look into it. He did look into it. He too agreed that these were not the same people. And
He just looks like a middle-aged man who's put on some weight.
Yeah.
it does to me too. He has gone to, maybe we need him to come back. He's gone to he's done things like look at the uniform. And this is not the uniform of a senior officer. There were differences in uniforms of junior officers and senior officers. Some were single-breasted, some were double-breasted. He's been looking at all that kind of thing. But again, he's a busy man, and he's not gotten back to us with any more things. But we're trying so many things. We're still waiting. We've got a lot of fingers out there looking for answers, and hopefully one of them is going to come back. But, you know, with some information. But this being the place that he was from, both when he was younger and then he came back when he was older, it just seems like somewhere the answer has to be with us somewhere. The older picture, the newer picture, when he was younger. So please just be aware, and as you're researching, reading, doing whatever, any hints at all would be so appreciated. I don't know of, other than Misty Dustall, I don't know what other Dustalls. I've looked through the Dustall book up in the genealogy. I see where his mother's name was Mabel Woods, but it doesn't go into the Woods side of things. So maybe there's other things in the museum, in the gene library that I'm not aware of, that I haven't looked at, that I haven't found. But it's just very important to us, I think. First of all, it's important because we want the answer to be right, and we want the things in our museum to be labeled properly. And if we don't have a picture of him, we want one. He's certainly important to our history, so.
Did he have siblings in this area, or?
I can't find anything. All I know is that his mother's name was Mabel Woods, her maiden name, and that Bert Destall's middle name was Woods, after his mother's maiden name. So that's the only, I don't know of anybody else. They think that his first 5 children were born in Iowa, maybe not all of them in Jackson County, because there's some connection somehow with Independence, and I don't know what that is. So I can't check it out because I don't know what it is. So whether one of his children might have been born in Independence. Anyway, that is our story about Colonel Joseph J. Woods. We need help with him, so we get this story correct and straight. I want to thank Terry for coming to tape for us and for bringing that beautiful rifle to us. It is indeed wonderful. If anybody wants to buy raffle tickets, excuse me, Terry has them.
Or if you just want to come look
Sorry,
closer at
yes,
the weapon.
Allergies. Yes, and please do look at the weapon. Just don't touch it without gloves.
Without gloves, right?
Because Terry will be there. All right. Thank you very, very much.